want to hear this one. So before we get there, this is a very important thing for me. Like for you as a salesperson closing that first 7-figure deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What do you think happened to your mindset? Like, do you remember when it happened? How it happened? Like, do you think that's something that changed in you? Like, what was this like? Oh, like what happened after you closed that first deal? Big one.
A couple of things. Smaller deals lost their luster, like immediately.
They lost their what?
Luster, like they became less interesting.
Oh, gotcha.
I had to work to get that back. That's not
Yeah.
there today. Now I like all revenue.
Yeah.
But like immediately, like everything else became less cool. And to your point on the numbers, like I remember the exact dollar amount of that deal.
I bet.
And like I remember exactly where I was when it closed. I remember all of that. And I think like the big thing there for me was it was this culmination of everything, all of the skill sets I had to get there, right? So that deal is actually a really interesting story because it was a deal that took a long time. It was one that I cultivated, gave up and handed off to another salesperson because I moved into leadership, and I couldn't keep fostering it. And then it got to a point where the sales rep at the time that was managing it, he literally said one day he had another deal that he was more confident in that was going to close that was conflicting with a site visit for it. And I still knew the leadership team at SIA at the time that was managing the project. And I was like, hey, are you going to the site visit tomorrow? He's like, no, I'm canceled. I'm not showing on it. I'm going to get all the info and I'll apply for it later. And I literally walked into Adam's office, the CEO, and I said, this happened. I need to get to North Carolina. I wasn't working the account. I wasn't doing it anymore.
Wow.
I serviced this client. I was like, I need to go. And he was like, go buy a plane ticket, get out of here. And I called my wife and I said, hey, I need to go to North Carolina tonight. That SIA deal, the reps dropping the ball on it. And she said, no problem. She did the most incredible thing. She literally packed a suitcase for me. We had young kids at the time, and I ran home, got my suitcase from her, and went immediately to the airport. Got in at like 2 a.m. and showed up at the site visit. And the interesting thing here, when it got to the site visit, we did this whole big engineering study. I didn't have an engineer with me, but all these other massive companies had these engineers, and I paid attention to two things that were really important. One, like I immediately clarified when I got there that everybody was going to be getting the same engineering docs and that everything was going to be cited and surveyed. And I called our guy and I said, look, can we get aerial imagery on this and satellite imagery on this to double check everything? He said, yeah, sure. I said, okay, great. We get there and everyone that was there were probably like 12. There was a lot of companies there bidding the project. And keep in mind, I had put this deal together that got to the point that it went to RFP. And I spent all of my time, we literally have this meeting with everyone bidding, and then everybody disperses to do site measurements and visits and stuff like that. And all the other sales guys and engineers scatter. And I spent all of my time with the buyers. And I walked around with them, asking them questions about what was important to them about the deal.
Wow.
How are they going to benefit for it? Like what was going to harken back to the Zebra deal? Like, how could I help them look like rock stars with this project? Like what was going to be really important to them in the deal? And I used that 45-minute site visit to really go deep on not the specs for the project, which is what everybody else was there for, but was to understand exactly what was going to help that customer win in the marketplace with the deal. And what I ended up learning was the most important thing was not the cheapest project, right? They were a publicly traded business. They wanted their executive team to be able to do press talking about how they were doing this class-leading partnership with world-class materials that was going to take their business from an image standpoint. At the time, LTL Trucking, which was the business, like big 18-wheelers and under 750-mile radiuses. I studied their industry to figure it out, right? Was getting a bad rap for emissions, and they wanted to have a clean energy project that they could point to, and they could talk about on earnings calls and things like that, and on press releases, and to talk with their clients of, hey, Saia is making this effort to become more green. This is our pilot project. And so then I learned about how that executive I was talking to at the time, all of his processes and the game that was going to be played out behind closed doors, who the buyers were, how it was going to be evaluated, what was important from a bonding standpoint, what was in bonding being like actual insurance bonding, under not just the minimums, but what was going to be preferable, what the reporting and additional stuff that could be done. So we built this package surrounding them and surrounding all of those goals. And we were not the low bid by any means, but we ended up tying it to everything else that was important to the deal. And that is what ended up being really important with that first one, was seeing, it's a combination of the investment, the people, and what's important to them specifically, right? There's a lot of people that were out there trying to get all these other things that they thought were important, right? And no one, literally, I watched everybody scatter around to get all the information they needed for a bid, and no one spent time with those guys that were actually there but me. And I just walked around, took some notes.
How many people were there? I mean, I don't know. How many?
There were probably about 12 or 13 people there.
So what you did you do this by intentionally, or?
100%.
So that was your intention. I'm staying with these buyers. I'm not going to go.
100%. It was all about the relationship, and it was all about figuring out what was going to make it a win for them. Personal. And this is important. Make it a win for their company and for them personally.
Right.
It was the first time that I started asking the questions about, how is this going to help you meet your KPIs for your role for the year, so you get your bonuses and you get the promotion? Like, how can we leverage this transaction into your career goals? And I literally walked around this roof, walked around this whole big shipping yard, asking those questions of the guys. Or everybody else would come by and be like, hey, what about the racking system? What type of racking system do you guys prefer? Tell me about the parapet, like the dividers.
Right. So they stay surface like.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, over there, you're infiltrating the.
And I literally asked, hey, can I email you guys and follow up on some of the advanced engineering stuff we need to? Like, yeah, sure, no problem. So I knew immediately I was going to be able to go back and ask all those questions if I needed to, but I wasn't going to get that time to understand all of that stuff again. And that's what I ended up doing.
That's impressive. So you focused on making them look like a hero to their company instead of you being the hero.
Yeah. Who gives a crap about me?
Exactly. Right.
At the end of the day.
Thank you.